bend in my gaze. Echoes of the past ignite a blazing haze. I speak in riddles, I dwell in the unknown. Yet in this endless night I find my throne. Every star aligns, guiding me through the dark. Every whispered vow ignites a hidden spark. Starlit oath, I rise above the night. With us at my side, darkness turns to light. Through the void I claim my destiny. I am the shadow, I am eternity. Moonlight drips like silver on my skin. Time dissolves, the legend begins within. No chains can bind the heart that seeks the sky. I am the night, I am the reason why. Starlit oath, I rise above the night. With thoughts at my side, darkness turns to light. Through the void I claim my destiny. I am the shadow, I am eternity. In the shadow of the moon I walk alone. Whispers of the night, secrets carved in stone. Raven wings carry the echoes of my name. Through the silent veil, nothing stays the same. Every star aligns, guiding me through the dark. Every whispered vow ignites a hidden spark. Starlit oath, I rise above the night. With Oz at my side, darkness turns to light. Through the void I claim my destiny. I am the shadow, I am eternity. Every step I take, the stars bend in my gaze. Echoes of the past ignite a blazing haze. I speak in riddles, I dwell in.
Oh, hello, quite a few. Yes, I'm still playing this game. Hopefully it's almost done. Hopefully. My friends came over, that's why the previous stream was kind of short. Just shooting the shit. Where are my manners?
You don't have to answer. Rowan. I almost did not answer. The phone sat on my knee until the screen went black, then lit again when I touched it, then went black again. A tiny rehearsal of indecision. Rowan had always occupied the edge of my life with Jade, like a figure in a painting whose expression changes depending on where you stand. I had met her at birthdays, at one grim Thanksgiving, at a summer picnic where Jade had organized a volleyball game with the manic commitment of a camp counselor, and Rowan had sat under a tree repairing the broken clasp of an antique bracelet for our host's grandmother. Fraternal twins, people always explained after seeing them together, as if their differences required a disclaimer. Jade was all movement, bright hair, quick hands, laughter arriving before the joke. Rowan had darker hair she wore in a low knot, or loose waves when she forgot to manage it, gray-green eyes that seemed to wait a second before accepting light, and a way of standing that suggested she had learned long ago to take up only the space she intended. She worked as a restoration artist, which I had once thought sounded romantic in the vague way of professions involving quiet rooms and tiny brushes. Jade had described it with affectionate impatience. Rowan fixes rich people's cracked saints. Rowan had smiled at that and said, "Sometimes the saints are only chipped." I remembered that because I had liked her voice. Lower than Jade's, slower, with a dry note that made every sentence feel gently sanded. I had been with Jade then, loyal down to the marrow. Noticing her sister's voice had embarrassed me so much I had overcompensated by asking Jade whether she wanted another drink. Now Rowan's message sat in my hand like an object recovered from a fire. Priya found me staring at it and peered over my shoulder without shame. "Oh," she said, "the quiet twin? Don't call her that. You called her that after the picnic." I was allowed. I still had a life then. Priya read the message twice. "It's decent. It's a trap. Everything feels like a trap when you've recently discovered the floor was fake." I typed, "Thank you," then deleted it. I typed, "I don't know what to say." Deleted. Finally, I wrote, "I appreciate you saying that. I don't know what else I can handle right now," she answered 10 minutes later. "You don't need to handle me." I only wanted to say it once. That should have been the end of it. A humane exchange between two people connected by damage and good manners. But grief, I learned, makes strange appetites.
There is no upstate, or downstate, or neighboring state when it comes to healthcare. The standards should not change. It should rise to meet every community. Northwell is here to raise health for all, with more resources, new technology, and the most awarded health system in the tri-state, for everyone who calls this place home. New Vance Health is now Northwell. Northwell, raise health.
It's a ship. Those flashes of light, those were its engines. It's nothing like any spacecraft I've ever seen. Humanity isn't alone in the universe, and I've just met our neighbors.
I found myself rereading Rowan's message at odd hours, not because it soothed me exactly, but because it did not ask anything. Jade's messages needed me to perform a role in her redemption, even when she did not mean them to. Rowan simply placed a small clean cloth beside the wound and stepped back. A week later, I saw her by accident at the farmer's market near PSU. I was buying apples I did not want because Priya had said, with the authority of someone who had once survived a divorce and a juice cleanse, that fiber mattered. Rowan stood at a flower stall in a long charcoal coat, holding a bunch of dahlias the color of old wine. For half a second, my body recognized Jade and surged with anger so fast I nearly dropped the apples. Then Rowan turned fully, and the resemblance broke apart. Her face was not Jade's face. The bones had a family echo, yes, but the expression was different. The mouth softer at rest, the gaze more private. She saw me. We both froze with the theatrical subtlety of deer in headlights. "Mara," she said. "Hi." The word came out suspiciously, as if I were accusing her of appearing in public. She looked at the apples in my bag. "Those are good for baking." I'm mostly planning to stare at them until they rot. Her mouth curved, not Jade's quick grin. Rowan's smile arrived like a lamp warming from inside. "That is also a traditional use." The flower vendor asked whether she still wanted the dahlias. Rowan paid, then stepped away with me under the edge of a blue canopy while rain collected and fell in sudden sheets from the corners. We talked for 7 minutes about nothing that mattered and everything that did. The market, work, the damp. She did not mention Jade. I loved her for that before I knew love was anywhere in the building. "There's a coffee stand around the corner," she said finally, careful enough that I could hear her building an exit into the invitation. "Only if you want. 10 minutes. Or not." I should have said not. I said 10 minutes. The first coffee with Rowan was not romantic. I say this because memory, left unsupervised, likes to polish beginnings until they shine falsely. We stood under an awning with paper cups, both of us too aware of the absurdity. I had dated her sister for 2 years. She had known my favorite winter soup because Jade had once complained about how often I made it. I had cried into a bowl of cereal over a person who shared her childhood photographs. Romance would have been obscene that morning. What existed instead was a cautious, damaged civility and a strange relief at speaking to someone who did not need the backstory translated. "I don't know what Jade told you," I said. Rowan looked into her coffee. "Enough. Not all. She is good at giving herself a soft edit." That's one way to put it. "I'm not here to ask for your version." "Why are you here?" I asked it bluntly because grief had burned off several layers of social polish. Rowan took no offense. If anything, she looked relieved by the clean shape of the question. "Because I liked you before any of this," she said. "As a person. I thought you were kind and funny and smarter than the rooms you were in. And because what happened to you was wrong. Those facts don't require me to be useful." I had no defense against that. Usefulness was the currency I understood. Jade had needed brightness reflected back at her, reassurance delivered in the right tone, patience disguised as trust. Rowan stood beside me and claimed no function. Rain tapped the awning. A cyclist cursed at a puddle. I looked at Rowan's hands around the cup, the nails short and clean, a faint line of blue paint near her thumb. "What are you restoring now?" I asked, because the silence was too intimate. She told me about an oil portrait from 1892, a woman in a green dress damaged by smoke and neglect. "People think restoration is making things look new," she said. "Usually it is deciding how much of the damage belongs to the object now." I laughed once under my breath. Dangerous thing to say to a freshly dumped woman. Color touched her cheek. I realized that as it left my mouth. "No, it's good. Painfully on theme, but good." She smiled into her cup. We did not make a plan to meet again. That would have required admitting we had met in a way that could continue. But a few days later, she sent me a photograph of the green-dressed portrait, just a corner of the sleeve under a magnifying lamp, with the message, "The smoke damage is extremely committed to its aesthetic." I laughed alone in Priya's spare room, a full, unguarded laugh, and then cried because laughter had become evidence that I was betraying my own misery. I answered with a photograph of the Dachshund logo wearing its rejected crown. "Client says, too imperial." Rowan replied, "The people fear a strong sausage monarch." That became the beginning. Not flirtation, not yet. A thread of ordinary ridiculousness stretched across the hole in my life. We sent each other small things. A sign outside a laundromat that read, "Lost Sock Memorial." A paint sample named Restless Sea, which Rowan said sounded like Jade's memoir title if Jade ever learned accountability and maritime metaphors.
Headlines are always talking about the Fed. The Fed raised rates. The Fed cut rates. The Fed is fighting inflation. Most people don't interact directly with the Fed. That is, the Federal Reserve Bank. You don't walk into a Fed branch to open a checking account or make a withdrawal. Bonnie and Clyde never stormed the Fed, but Fed decisions can make your car payments more expensive, your mortgage cheaper, or a job harder to find. So let's take a closer look at the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. What is it? Who runs it? And why was it created?
Excuse me, Steve, may I? Gosh, I created a national bank, but it's just not the same. I look forward to hearing more. Take it away, Steve. I'll be watching.
I'm Steve Ballmer, and this is Just the Facts. Data-driven facts to help you make up your own mind. In this episode, the Federal Reserve. It was created after a series of financial panics, especially the Panic of 1907, which led to runs on banks and one big mess. A run on a bank is when lots of customers all try to withdraw their money at the same time from their regular, everyday banks, the ones you and I use. Even a healthy bank can run out of cash if that happens. So in 1913, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act. It's the most important bank you'll never actually use. So why is it even called a bank? Because it's a bank for banks. It holds cash reserves for banks, it moves money between banks, and it can lend to banks whenever needed. Today, the Fed has 5 core responsibilities. First, conduct the nation's monetary policy to keep inflation in check and employment high. Second, keep the financial system stable by preventing crises like bank runs, by lending money to banks so they can keep operating. Third, supervise certain financial institutions like banks and savings and loans. Fourth, foster payments and settlement systems like wiring money. And fifth, promote consumer protection. The last 3 make sure the financial system works and plays by the rules.
I started a national bank, but never a central bank. That's impressive.
I'm going to focus most on number 1, monetary policy, because that's where the Fed most directly affects your wallet. Here's a big reason why. The Fed can influence interest rates. I'll explain how in a minute, but here's what it means. The Fed can run the economy hot by working to lower interest rates. That can make buying a house, getting a car loan, or borrowing to open a business less expensive. Problem with hot is it may make money easier to borrow, which may fuel inflation. Or the Fed can run the economy cold. By raising interest rates, all those things become more expensive. The problem with cold is it may make money harder to borrow, which can slow the economy down and could have a lot of secondary effects, such as higher unemployment. So exactly how does all that happen? The Federal Reserve doesn't raise your interest rates directly. It raises or lowers its target range for what is known as the federal funds rate. Whoa, jargon warning. Federal funds range? What's that mean? Banks move money between each other every day as customers withdraw or deposit money. By the end of the day, some banks have extra cash, while others...
I should
Sorry,
have been offended
got
by
kinda
Jade's
zoned out.
behalf, but Jade had forfeited some protections. After another week, Rowan asked if I wanted coffee in an actual chair. I said yes. We met at a place on Division with fogged windows and pastries arranged like precious minerals. Rowan arrived early and chose a table where I could see the door, which I noticed and then pretended not to notice. She wore a black sweater with one sleeve pushed higher than the other and smelled faintly of turpentine, paper, and bergamot. Jade had always worn perfume that arrived before she did. Rowan's scent waited until she moved. We spoke of work. I told her about clients who wanted authenticity in 6 logo variations by Monday. She told me about collectors who wanted cracks erased from family heirlooms because history looked untidy on the mantle. Do you ever want to leave the cracks? I asked. Often. Sometimes I do. Carefully. Can you do that? Only if I can defend it. I held my cup with both hands. Sounds exhausting. It is less exhausting than pretending damage never happened. There it was again, the studio vocabulary stepping too close to my ribs. I looked out the window so she would not see my face. Rowan let me. That was one of the first differences I learned. Jade pursued silence like a challenge. Rowan kept it company. Seeing Rowan as separate from Jade was not a single act of enlightenment. It was a repetitive, humiliating practice, like physical therapy for a muscle I had not known existed. Her laugh surprised me every time because it did not climb the air like Jade's. It stayed lower, sometimes almost soundless, visible first in the narrowing of her eyes. She disliked olives. Jade had put olives in everything, including, once, a breakfast scramble I still considered a misdemeanor. Rowan listened before speaking, not performatively, not with the bright, waiting impatience of someone rehearsing their next entrance, but as if language deserved to be allowed to land. She walked slower. She hated being late. She drank coffee black and tea with honey. Jade turned every room toward herself without meaning harm. Rowan seemed to notice where the room was already looking and choose a place slightly to the side. None of this prevented my brain from betraying me. Once, during our third coffee, she tucked her hair behind her ear, and I saw Jade at 26 in a photo from their mother's house, sunburned and laughing, and my stomach clenched so hard I set my cup down too loudly. Rowan noticed. Of course she did. "Mara," she said gently. "You just went somewhere." I hated the kindness in her voice because it gave me nowhere to hide. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. I compared you."
Here, expert care begins with a conversation, where your genetic history is rewriting your future, and where we are redefining cardiac, cancer, and orthopedic care with world-class partners. Here, there's an emergency department designed just for kids, and mental health means community health. From the everyday to the complex, Stanford Health. Care, it's different here.
Contract data is buried in inboxes, shared drives, disconnected systems. That's where Agiloft comes in. Agiloft transforms contract data into business intelligence.
I know. She did not look hurt exactly. She looked like someone confirming whether she had already dressed for. "It's going to happen. That doesn't make it fair." "No," she said, "but fair has not been doing much useful work lately." I laughed despite myself. She looked down at her hands. "I need you to know I don't want to be a ghost in this for you, or a substitute, or a punishment you give yourself by being near me." My face went hot. "I don't know what you are." "That's all right." She looked at me then, steady and sad. "I know what I'm not." It would have been easier if she had been offended. I could have withdrawn into righteous shame and called it respect. Instead, she named the thing before it became a haunting, and in doing so made a space where honesty, ugly and necessary, could sit down between us without wrecking the table. By December, I had moved from Priya's spare room into a sublet above a vintage clothing store in Selwood, a narrow place with slanted floors and radiators that clanked as if they were haunted by small, judgmental plumbers. It came furnished with a velvet chair the color of mustard and a bookshelf full of travel guides from 2008. I loved it immediately because nothing in it remembered Jade. The first night there, Priya brought takeout and a bottle of Prosecco she called the sparkling wine of transitional housing. We sat on the floor because the chair seemed too solemn for dinner, and she made me toast to the fact that I had socks again. I had retrieved my things from the apartment 2 days earlier while Jade was out. She had left the fox dish towel folded on top of a box of my books. I hated her for that kindness, then hated myself for hating her, then carried the box down 3 flights of stairs, feeling like a woman removing her own organs in labeled containers. Jade and I had spoken once by then, a phone call that lasted 11 minutes and aged me by several years. She cried. I cried after hanging up, not during. She said Daniel made her feel possible. I said that was a beautiful thing to feel and a terrible thing to finance with another person's trust. She took that silently. She apologized without defending herself for nearly a full minute, which was new and late and not enough. I did not forgive her. I also did not want her destroyed. That complicated people when they asked how I was doing. Hatred would have been tidy. What I had instead was a drawer full of unmatched emotions, all snagging on each other when I tried to close it. Rowan did not ask about the call until I brought it up in her studio one evening. I had begun going there sometimes after work, not often enough to name it a habit, not rarely enough to pretend it meant nothing. The studio was in an old warehouse near the river, up 2 flights of stairs that smelled of dust, varnish, and wet wool. Broken, beautiful things lived there under white cloths and task lamps, frames with missing corners, chipped porcelain birds, paintings whose faces emerged in stages from grime. The first time I walked in, I said, "This place is very on the nose." Oh, Rowan, unlocking a cabinet of pigments, said, "I considered specializing in taxidermy just to spare you the symbolism." I liked the studio too much. That was its own problem. I liked the long work tables scarred by decades of careful labor. I liked the metal drawers labeled in Rowan's neat handwriting. I liked the way she put on magnifying glasses and became both older and more vulnerable. Her attention narrowed to a flake of paint the size of a comma. I sat near the window with my sketchbook, pretending to work on client drafts while drawing the objects around me. A cracked blue vase, Rowan's hand holding a brush. The curve of her neck when she bent over a panel. I tore that page out and hid it in my bag as if the sketchbook had become a witness for the prosecution. Desire did not arrive dramatically. It accumulated. A sleeve rolled to the elbow, the heat of her shoulder when she leaned past me to reach for a rag, the precise way she said my name when asking whether I wanted more tea. I found myself washing my hair before seeing her, then scolding myself in the mirror like a disappointing intern. She was Jade's sister. She had known me as Jade's girlfriend. I was newly broken, emotionally under permit review, and in no condition to build anything. Also, inconveniently, I was alive. My body, which had spent weeks as a locked room, began opening windows without consulting me. Rowan gave me no reason to think she wanted that. She was careful to the point of pain. When our hands brushed, she moved away first. When I stayed late, she offered to call me a rideshare, but did not suggest I remain. If she looked at my mouth, and sometimes I thought she did so with the discipline of a person stepping back from the edge of a roof. One night, snow threatened, but arrived only as cold rain. We ate noodles from cartons at the work table, while a space heater clicked near our feet. I told her about designing a poster for a community theater production of Twelfth Night, and she said, "Disguises, mistaken identities, everyone falling in love with the wrong person. Very restful." I thought you liked old things. Old things can be foolish. You fix them anyway. She met my eyes over the noodles. Sometimes.
There isn't a city standard, or a rural standard, or a good enough for here standard. There should be one standard of healthcare, and it's being raised for everyone. New Vance Health is now Northwell. Northwell, raise health.
Up for an adventure?
Gross. My way. Stop. I guess I'd better get going then.
Lost in a dream, side of the road. Pick me up, yeah, where we gonna go? 'Cause I just want you.
This is where, yes, I think I remember.
Maybe we come back here one last time when we're old and feeble.
Yeah, maybe.
Hey, is this yours?
Kinda?
Now, does this dog belong to you or not?
Forget it! All this was a mistake. A huge mistake.
When I flip through your journal, it feels like someone really wanted you to see this through, to keep going.
I'm glad you forced me on this little adventure.
I just hoped for the best and went for it.
Well, I'm glad you did.
The word hung there, small and loaded. I looked away first. The truth about Rowan's silence came out on a Tuesday, because important damage is rarely considerate enough to choose a dramatic setting. We were in her studio. I had brought oranges because her diet, when unsupervised, seemed to consist of coffee, toast, and whatever emotions Antique Varnish provided. She was examining a small religious icon darkened by age, her lamp turning the gold leaf into a trapped sunset. I was peeling an orange in one long strip and feeling proud of the useless achievement when she said, "Mara, there is something I should tell you." I knew from her voice that the sentence had been waiting for months. My hands became still. The orange peel dangled from my thumb. Okay. She removed her glasses and set them on the cloth beside the icon with unnecessary precision. I knew about Daniel before you did. The studio changed temperature. Outside, a truck backed up with 3 dull beeps. I looked at the orange in my hand as if it might offer legal counsel. How long before? 3 months. It was such a clean number. Too clean. It entered me without resistance, then began cutting from the inside. Rowan's face was pale, her mouth set as if she were holding herself together with her teeth. Jade told me she had met someone. She framed it as confusion at first. I told her confusion did not entitle her to lie to you. Later, I realized it had become more than talking. I confronted her. I told her she had to tell you, or I would. But you didn't. No. She did not flinch from it. That made it worse and better. She promised me she would. She said she needed a few days to do it right. Then it was your birthday weekend, and she asked me not to ruin it. Then there was always another reason. I should have told you anyway. My chest hurt with a specificity almost like hunger. 3 months? Yes. You sat across from me at her birthday dinner and knew. Her eyes shone. Yes. I remembered that dinner with cruel clarity. A loud table, Jade's friends, candles stuck into a lemon cake because she hated frosting. Rowan sitting across from me, quiet, passing me a clean fork when mine fell. I had thanked her. She had looked at me for 1 second too long. At the time, I thought she was simply shy. Now that second expanded backward, filling with knowledge. I wanted anger to come in pure. I wanted it to be a clean weather system I could name and survive. Instead, I felt a complicated grief that made me tired before I had finished feeling it. Were you protecting her? I asked. Rowan looked down. At first, maybe. Or protecting the idea that she would do the right thing if cornered. I don't know if there is a meaningful difference. There is to me. I know. She pressed her fingers to the edge of the table until the knuckles lightened. I was also selfish. The word startled me. How? Because telling you would have put me inside your life in a way I had no right to be. I was already... She stopped, swallowed. I already cared what happened to you more than I should have. The studio air thickened. My mind seized on the confession and rejected it at the same time, like a body rejecting a transplant. What does that mean? She looked at me then, and there was no craft in her face, no soft edit, no escape route. I had feelings for you. I never intended to act on them. I thought the decent thing was distance. Then Jade told me what she was doing, and every choice looked contaminated. If I told you, maybe part of me wanted you away from her. If I didn't, I was complicit. I chose badly. I stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. The orange rolled from the table and fell without drama. You had feelings for me while I was with your sister. Yes. And you knew she was cheating. Yes. And you let me sit in rooms with both of you looking like an idiot. Pain crossed her face, but she did not defend herself. You were not an idiot. Don't, I said. The word came out sharp enough to cut both of us. Do not make that gentle. She nodded once. You're right. I grabbed my coat. My hands shook so badly I missed the sleeve twice, which should have been humiliating, but I had no room left for new feelings. At the door, Rowan said, I am sorry. It was not Jade's sorry. It did not ask to be received. It stood there bleeding quietly. I left anyway. Outside, the rain had turned mean. It hit my face in cold little needles as I walked without direction, coat open, hair flattening to my cheeks. I made it 6 blocks before realizing I had left my sketchbook in the studio. The thought of returning made my throat close. The thought of Rowan finding the hidden pages inside it made everything worse, because the sketches of her had multiplied without permission. Her profile under the lamp. Her hands.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call.
I'll be right
in my
back.
office.
Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator. Book share an app.
A workflow manager that
Tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Trash duty schedule.
Since no one seems to care.
just built a
I
performance
just created a goal
manager.
tracking system.
We built the same thing, didn't we?
Yep.
Can this thing manage contact?
Is the SOC 2 compliant?
I want to animate this graph.
Create a party planner.
Profesor de español.
An inter-office dating app. For dogs. For office dogs. You know what I mean?
Victory is in my sight.
Extreme force! No more holding back! Optic Fury!
The back of her neck. A half-finished study of her mouth that I had told myself was about shadow. I ducked under the awning of a closed pet grooming salon and laughed once, bitterly. There I was, betrayed by one twin, furious with the other, and still apparently committed to making visual evidence of my worst ideas. Priya picked up on the second ring. Do I need shoes? She asked. What? Your voice sounds like I need shoes and possibly bail money. I told her. Not all of it. Enough. She arrived 20 minutes later in a rideshare, wearing a parka over pajamas, and the expression of a woman prepared to fight the entire Vale family tree. In the car, she listened with a clenched jaw. When I finished, she said, "Well, that is spectacularly messy. Thank you for the legal analysis." She's not innocent. No. She's also not Jade. I know that. I snapped, too fast. Priya looked at me with painful patience. Do you? I turned toward the window. The city smeared itself in wet neon. I don't know what I know. That's allowed. I hate that she didn't tell me. You should. I also understand why she didn't. That is root of your empathy. I barked out a laugh and then covered my face. Priya put a hand on my knee. She did not say it would be okay, because she was too good a friend to throw a cheap blanket over a complicated fire. For 2 weeks, I did not answer Rowan. She sent one message the next morning. I left your sketchbook with Priya. I will not contact you again unless you want me to. I am sorry. That was all. No explanations. No carefully folded heartbreak slipped under the door. The restraint made me angrier because it was exactly what I would have asked of her if I had been able to ask anything. Silence with Rowan was different from silence with Jade. Jade's silence had been crowded, full of what she was withholding. Rowan's silence had space in it, which meant I had to fill it myself. I filled it badly. I worked late. I redesigned a website for a ceramics collective until every bowl on the page looked like a judgmental moon. I took long walks after midnight through neighborhoods shining with rain and holiday lights, past windows where other people seemed to be succeeding at being warm. I argued with myself in the language of a woman who had been hurt enough to become suspicious of mercy. You are lonely, I told myself. You are confusing kindness with safety. You are attracted to the nearest person who understands the shape of the wound. You are not special. This is just trauma with good lighting. Then another voice, quieter and more irritating, would ask why Rowan's absence felt less like withdrawal and more like missing a color I had learned to see. I sketched faces and lied about them. One page became a woman from a coffee shop. Another became an invented saint from Rowan's damaged icon. Another was simply Rowan, because denial has limits and mine had become embarrassing. Her mouth emerged under my pencil with more tenderness than I intended. I tore the page out, then taped it back in 15 minutes later because the melodrama of tearing it out offended my design sensibilities. Jade called once during that silence. I almost did not answer, but something in me was tired of being frightened by names on a screen. Her voice sounded thin. She asked how I was. I said, functional in short bursts. She laughed sadly, then apologized for laughing. Daniel had gone back to Seattle for work, she said, though I had not asked. She and I spoke like two people standing on opposite sides of a collapsed bridge, describing weather. At the end, she said, Rowan told me what she did. My hand tightened around the phone. Did she? I was angry at her. That surprised a laugh out of me. Of course you were. Jade was quiet. I deserved that. Yes, she should have told you, but I made it hard. You made everything hard. Yes, she said, and for the first time there was no soft edit in her voice. I did. I did not forgive her then either, but I slept almost 4 hours that night, which felt like a diplomatic breakthrough with my own body. The gallery opening arrived as a postcard in my mailbox, though I suspect the universe had help from Priya. 3 restored works from the Willamette collection, the card said, including the smoke-damaged portrait of the woman in green. Rowan's name appeared in small print beneath the museums, modest to the point of comedy. Priya stood in my kitchen, holding the card and pretending she had not known about it. Interesting, she said. Very. You could go.
There is a liar in these tunnels. They call him Führer, but that is not your name. Your name is Hunter. As a Spartan, you were a legend. But where are the Spartans now? To protect the metro from your lies. And now, Hunter, I won't stop until the Führer burns.
That feeling you get when you're getting an incredible deal. That feeling of value. That's why you shop Ocean State Job Lot. Here, you'll always find a lot more for a lot less.
I could also develop a sudden passion for spelunking. You do love caves. I love lamps and exits. She leaned against the counter. You don't have to talk to her. You can see the work and leave. That was exactly the kind of reasonable suggestion that becomes dangerous because it sounds like a plan. I told myself I was going for the portrait, for the idea of damage made visible without being glorified. I told myself I wanted to understand the work separate from the person, which was a sophisticated lie, and therefore more convincing. On the night of the opening, I changed clothes 4 times and ended up in a dark blue dress I had once bought, because Jade said it made me look serious in a sexy librarian way. I almost took it off for that reason. Then I kept it on because Jade no longer owned my reflection. The gallery was in the Pearl. All polished concrete, white walls, and people speaking at the volume of money. Glasses of wine moved through the room on trays. A man in a scarf used the word patina as a verb. I entered with the intention of staying 20 minutes and arranged my face into the expression I used for client meetings when someone suggested making the logo more viral. Rowan was not immediately visible. That helped. I found the portrait at the far wall. The woman in green sat in a carved chair, one hand resting on a book, her gaze aimed just beyond the viewer, as if she had seen something worth considering and had not yet decided whether to approve. The dress was not bright. It held several greens at once: moss, bottle glass, the underside of leaves after rain. Along one sleeve, the smoke damage remained faintly visible, not erased, but softened, incorporated, like a shadow the painting had chosen to keep. I stood in front of that portrait longer than I meant to. Around me, people murmured about technique, provenance, insurance. I saw instead Rowan's patience made visible, not perfection, not denial. The work did not pretend the fire had never touched the canvas. It refused to let the fire have the last word. Something in me loosened with such quietness that I nearly missed it. I thought of Rowan at her table, breath held, brush moving in increments smaller than regret. I thought of the way she had told the truth about herself without asking me to make it painless. I thought of how often I had mistaken brightness for honesty because Jade's light had been so warm. Rowan's honesty was not bright. It was a lamp left on in a difficult room. The second restored piece was a river landscape, with a sky repaired so gently the old tear remained visible only if you knew where to look. The third was the icon. Gold leaf cleaned around a face whose expression had survived centuries of handling, smoke, prayer, neglect. I stood before it and remembered the orange peel dangling from my thumb when Rowan confessed. I remembered her saying, "I chose badly." There are apologies that try to move the injured person out of the way so the apologizer can see herself kindly again. Rowan's had not. It had remained where I left it, uncollected. Mara. Her voice came from behind me. I closed my eyes for half a second, not ready and entirely ready. When I turned, Rowan stood a few feet away in a black suit that fit her with quiet severity, her hair pinned at the nape of her neck, a tiny smear of something gold near one cuff that no one else would have noticed. She looked both terrified and composed, which I had learned was her specialty. For a moment, I saw the family resemblance, the mouth, the cheekbones, the childhood echo. Then she inhaled, slow and careful, and she was only herself. "Hi," I said. It was a small word, but it crossed the room between us like a bridge being tested for weight. "Hi," she said. Her gaze flicked to the portrait, then back to me. "I didn't know you were coming. I didn't tell anyone. Priya? Priya knows many things without being told. It's part of her menace." Rowan's mouth twitched. "I have always suspected that." We stood near the icon while a curator thanked donors into a microphone behind us. The applause rose and fell like rain on a roof. Rowan did not ask why I had come. I appreciated that, then resented appreciating it, then gave up trying to police every internal movement. "The portrait is beautiful," I said. "Thank you." "You left the smoke." Her eyes shifted to the far wall. "Some of it. The canvas had absorbed it. Taking all of it out would have meant taking too much of the original surface." "So the damage belongs now."
So the market has a clock?
So the Realtor.com market clock tracks data like inventory, time on market, buyer demand, so you know what to expect when you buy or sell.
Well, I'm on the clock, so I gotta go.
Today's the day. It's been months of treatment. Okay, this is it. The results are back. I know I've got the best team. That's why I chose Stanford Health. Hi, David. I've got great news. Your scans, they came back clear.
Stanford Health collaborates with Dana-Farber Brigham Cancer Center, ranked #3 nationally for cancer care. Together, we bring world-renowned cancer care to you.
She looked at me then, and the air changed. Some of it does. Neither of us spoke. A waiter approached with wine. We both declined so quickly, he retreated like a man who had interrupted a seance. I laughed under my breath. Rowan's shoulders eased a fraction. I'm not ready to have a dramatic conversation in front of a 19th century woman judging us, I said. She's quite discreet. She looks like she collects secrets for sport. Accurate. Her name is probably Beatrice. You've restored her and named her? Unofficially. Very professional. Extremely. The banter was a thread thrown across a ravine. Thin, maybe, but real. After the speeches, after a collector cornered Rowan with a question about humidity control, after I made a slow circuit of the room pretending to inspect brushwork while tracking her position with humiliating accuracy, she found me near the door. Would you like to walk? She asked. No pressure, no agenda, just air. My body answered before my ethics committee convened. Yes. We left the gallery together into a night rinsed clean by earlier rain. The Pearl's sidewalks shone under street lamps. Cars hissed through puddles. Rowan walked with her hands in her coat pockets, giving me space so deliberately I wanted to step into it out of spite. For 2 blocks, we said nothing. The city did not mind. It carried on with the generous indifference of cities, feeding us small noises, a dog collar jingling, a bus sighing at the curb, laughter spilling from a bar and then swallowed by a closing door. I had thought the conversation, when it came, would arrive like a verdict. Instead, it began with Rowan saying, "I miss your terrible client stories." I looked at her. That's your opening line? I've had 2 weeks to prepare and apparently settled on professional concern for boutique branding. It is a strong field. I panicked. The admission was so plain that I smiled. The smile hurt, not because it was false, but because it was easy. The Ceramics Collective rejected the judgmental moon bowls, I said, a loss for the arts. They wanted something warmer. Cowards. We walked another block. Then the humor thinned, as it had to. Rowan stopped near the railing above the old tracks, where the air smelled of wet iron and the river not far off. Mara, she said, I won't ask you to make what I did smaller. I stared at the dark line of the street. Good. I have wanted to explain, many times, but most explanations are just apologies wearing better shoes. I huffed once. That sounds like something a restoration artist would embroider on a pillow. I would choose a more tasteful fabric. The corner of my mouth lifted, then fell. She took a breath. I should have told you. I can tell you every reason I didn't. Some are understandable. None are enough. Hearing it still hurt. It also settled something that her silence had kept floating inside me. I keep thinking about that dinner, I said. Your birthday dinner? Jade's, lemon cake. I dropped my fork. Rowan closed her eyes briefly. I remember. You passed me another one. Yes. You knew. Yes. My throat tightened. I felt so stupid afterward. When I remembered it, her head turned sharply. You were not stupid. I know, in theory. Theory is doing its best. You trusted the person you loved. Her voice roughened. That is not stupidity. That is the point of loving someone. I swallowed. The street lamp made a pale stripe across her cheek. You loved her too, I said. She's your sister. Yes. And you were angry at her. Yes. And you had feelings for me. The words came out more quietly. Rowan went still. Yes. No poetry. No elaboration. The words stood naked in the cold. I turned toward her, and she did not look away. How long? I asked. A year, maybe. More honestly, since the picnic when you argued with that man about public library funding while holding a paper plate of potato salad. Despite everything, I laughed. Yeah. That was your moment? Civic rage and mayonnaise? You were very persuasive. He said libraries were obsolete. He survived only because Jade distracted you with pie. The memory rose bright and awful. Jade tugging me away, laughing, Rowan under the tree with the bracelet, watching. I had been happy that day. I let myself remember it without immediately burning the memory down. You never said anything. No, you were with Jade. That mattered to you. Of course it mattered. She looked almost offended by the idea that it might not. Wanting something does not make it yours to reach for. The sentence landed in me with painful force because it named exactly what Jade had failed to understand. I looked at Rowan's hands where they rested on the railing, long fingers, a tiny scar near the thumb. And after, I asked? After Jade told me? After I left. She smiled without happiness. After, everything I wanted looked like proof that I was terrible. Are you? Terrible. Proof.
We observe the pre-Firefly's workplace human, sprawling email chains, endless Slack channels, until at last, a breakthrough. Firefly's AI. Now AI assistants delivered meeting recaps and next steps. Try Fireflies for free in your next meeting.
She studied me. No, but guilt is not known for its accuracy. I looked down at the wet sidewalk. My reflection appeared in pieces between the streetlight and the dark. I wanted to hate you, I said. I think it would have helped. I wanted that too, for you. That's annoying. I have several annoying virtues. They are mostly just fear in formal clothes. The laugh that escaped me shook loose something lodged under my ribs. Rowan's eyes softened, and the tenderness there made me almost step back. Instead, I stayed. I was starting to feel things before you told me, I said. There, said, released. The night did not split open. I know, she whispered. Not smug, not triumphant. Stricken, almost. I tried not to know. I tried harder. Probably. I had charts. Did they help? No, they were mostly insulting. Her laugh was brief and low. I wanted to touch it. The river wind moved between us, lifting a strand of hair that had escaped her pin. My hand twitched at my side with the desire to tuck it back. An intimate gesture my body had no right to remember from anyone. I kept still. I am afraid, I said. Of me? Sometimes. Of what you look like from the corner of my eye. Of what people will think. Of what it says about me if I can want you after Jade. Of whether I'm turning pain into a shortcut. Of whether you will wake up one day and realize you confused guilt with love. Of every family dinner in the future, which is ambitious because we have not even survived this sidewalk. Rowan listened to the whole messy inventory without interrupting. When I finished, she looked out toward the dark suggestion of the river. I cannot change my face, she said. The simplicity of it broke my heart a little. I know. I have spent a long time being compared to Jade in ways that had nothing to do with either of us. She was the bright one. I was the difficult one. She made friends. I kept things. She moved on quickly. I remembered too much. People love symmetry until they meet the people trapped inside it. Her voice stayed calm, but her hand tightened on the railing. Fierce, I do not need you to pretend the resemblance doesn't exist. I only need to know you are willing to keep looking after the first resemblance ends. I felt that sentence travel through all the places in me still bruised. I am, I said, then corrected myself because earned love deserved better than dramatic certainty. I want to be. I think I have been, slowly. It scares me how much. Rowan turned back to me. Her eyes were wet but steady. I don't want to be your rescue. You're not. Or your revenge. God, no. Or the person who benefits from what Jade broke. That's the one I don't know how to answer. She nodded, accepting the honesty. Neither do I. We stood in that unsolved truth, and somehow it did not destroy the tenderness between us. Maybe because no one tried to solve it too quickly. Maybe because the beginning of trust is not certainty, but the refusal to make uncertainty lie. I looked at her mouth then, not by accident. She saw me do it. The night gathered around us with indecent attention. Mara, Rowan said, and my name sounded careful in her mouth. Not like a warning, not like a plea, but like a hand held out palm up. If you ask me to go, I will. I don't want you to go. The answer came before fear could dress it up. Her breath changed. I stepped closer, slowly enough that either of us could stop pretending it was not happening. The family resemblance flickered and vanished. Up close, Rowan's face was its own country. The faint line between her brows from years of concentration. A tiny freckle near her left cheekbone. The softer lower lip she worried when thinking. The gray-green of her eyes darkened by night. I had kissed Jade for 2 years. I knew the shape of Jade's mouth, the speed of her wanting, the way she pulled the world toward her. Rowan did not pull. She waited, and that waiting became its own unbearable heat. Tell me no if this is wrong, I whispered. It isn't wrong, she said, but it is complicated. Before we continue, if you enjoyed this story, you'll find plenty of spicy, steamy, and uncensored stories on my Patreon page in the description section. Only those who love steamy content are invited. Everything true seems to be. Her laugh barely formed. I touched her coat sleeve first, because beginning with her face felt like crossing too many borders at once. The wool was damp from the air. Beneath it, her arm was warm, tense. She looked down at my hand as if it were evidence of something she had no right to believe. I leaned in, and the kiss arrived without announcement, smaller than fantasy and more devastating for it. Her mouth was cool at first from the night, then warm. She did not rush. Neither did I. The first touch was almost a question. The second, an answer neither of us could finish speaking.
Big savings are here at Ashley Stars and Stripes sale. Hot buys for every room starting at just $4.99. Plus, for a limited time, get 0% interest for 60 months. Only at Ashley Stars and Stripes sale. Going on now. Visit us in one of our many tri-state locations.
That feeling you get when you're getting an incredible deal. When you're spending less and getting more. When every aisle offers quality items at the best prices. That feeling of value. That's why you shop Ocean State Job Lot. Shop your local Ocean State Job Lot for all the things you need. Here, you'll always find a lot more for a lot less.
My hand rose to her jaw, and I felt the tremor there. Felt her restraint unravel by a single thread as she kissed me back. Not Jade. Not a ghost. Not an echo wearing my grief's favorite shape. Rowan. The name moved through me like breath, returning after I had forgotten I was holding it. When we parted, we remained close enough that our foreheads nearly touched. A bus groaned past behind us, profoundly unimpressed. I laughed, and the laugh shook into a sob before I could stop it. Rowan froze. Did I hurt you? No, I said quickly. No, I'm just, unfortunately, alive. Her face crumpled with relief and humor. That does seem inconvenient. We walked for another hour after that because neither of us knew how to end the night without making it smaller or too large. We held hands only after 3 more blocks, and even then, we did it shyly, like teenagers or survivors of a minor shipwreck. Her hand fit mine differently from Jade's. I noticed, then let the noticing be ordinary. The city gave us privacy by continuing not to care. We passed shuttered boutiques, a bakery where someone inside was already preparing morning dough, a mural of cranes lifting their long painted legs through a field of blue. Rowan told me about learning restoration from an old woman in Florence who smoked secretly out a back window and called every careless student a barbarian. I told her about the first logo I ever designed for my mother's friend's yoga studio, involving a lotus so ugly it should have been illegal. We returned, carefully, to the harder things in small circles. Jade would find out eventually. Rowan's family would become a weather event. Priya would claim she had predicted everything while also threatening anyone who made me cry. She already threatened me once, Rowan admitted. I stopped walking. Priya? At Jade's birthday, actually. She pulled me aside after you went to the restroom and said, "You seem like the only reasonable Vale, so I am assigning you the task of making sure Mara gets the last piece of cake." I laughed so loudly a man locking his bike looked over. She weaponized dessert logistics. I obeyed. That was the fork night. And the cake night. The memory shifted slightly. Not healed, not erased, but complicated by another thread. Rowan across the table, guilty and gentle, making sure I got lemon cake while failing me in ways neither of us could undo. Love, I would learn, did not require clean origins. It required clean hands going forward, which was harder. Near midnight, Rowan walked me to my building. The vintage store window displayed a sequined jacket on a headless mannequin, glittering under security lights like a disco ball abandoned after a minor apocalypse. We stood under my awning, not touching for a moment because touching had become too easy to want. "I don't want to rush," I said. "Neither do I." I mean it. My heart is currently a building with scaffolding on every side. I have experience with unstable structures. Of course you do. Mara. Her voice steadied me. Slow is not a consolation prize to me. I kissed her again under the awning, less carefully this time, but not less tenderly. Her hands came to my waist, stopped, waited until I moved closer, then held me with a restraint that made heat unfurl low in my body, startling and honest. Desire after grief felt almost rude. It arrived carrying proof that the broken thing in me had not been the mechanism for wanting, only the map I had used to navigate it. Rowan made a sound against my mouth, quiet and involuntary, and I felt it everywhere. Then we separated because my neighbor chose that moment to come outside with a recycling bag full of wine bottles, which clanked like judgment. "Evening," he said, pretending with heroic incompetence not to notice the two women flushed under the awning. "Evening," I replied, and Rowan looked at the sidewalk with the solemnity of a monk. When the neighbor disappeared, we both started laughing, the kind of laughter that bends you toward the person beside you. I did not invite Rowan upstairs that night. I wanted to. The want was a bright wire under my skin. But there are thresholds one should not cross simply because they finally appear. She seemed to understand before I explained. "Text me when you're inside," she said. "You're standing right here." I am trying to be gallant. You're very old-fashioned for someone covered in solvent half the time.
Welcome to the Custom Showcase!
We are builders. We create, we build software, we serve small business. Our purpose is to grow the small business economy. For today, and for actually this whole month, we're going to be talking a lot about what we're doing to make your life easier as small business owners. There's a theme to Gusto at our strategy, things that big companies have had historically, that small companies have not had. We love leveling that playing field for you.
Honey, Mortgage Bunny 6 says we should keep renting.
Mortgage Bunny 6?
Reba says more realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. They track every market so you know when to make your move.
He also says that Bigfoot... Got it.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
Many nights smelled worse. I went upstairs smiling, then cried in the bathroom with the door closed, not because I regretted anything, but because my body had become a complicated archive, and every new tenderness disturbed the dust on old pain. I texted her, inside, also crying. Annoying, but not catastrophic. She replied, "I am home in 20 minutes. I can sit with you by phone if you want." I answered, "Not tonight, but thank you." Then, after staring at the screen for a long time, I added, "I liked kissing you." The 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Finally, I liked being kissed by you. Also kissing back, for the historical record. I slept with the phone beside me, not waiting for another message, only warmed by the fact that one existed. The weeks after the gallery did not turn into a montage, though I would have appreciated the efficiency. Healing remained rude and non-linear. Some mornings I woke light enough to make coffee and sing badly along to the radio. Other mornings I found one of Jade's old hair ties in a coat pocket and sat on the floor for 20 minutes as if the elastic were a relic from a destroyed civilization. Rowan and I moved slowly, then slower when needed, then unexpectedly faster in moments when truth made room. We met for breakfast and argued about whether pancakes counted as a meal or a surrender. We went to a museum, where she spent 10 minutes explaining why a badly restored cherub was an act of violence against both art and wings. I met her after work and walked with her along the river, our hands brushing until the contact became deliberate. Sometimes I had to stop and say, "I am comparing again," and she would nod, not pleased, but not crushed. "Tell me what you see now," she would say. It became our practice. At first, my answers were physical, simple anchors. Your hair is darker, your voice is lower, your hands are stiller. Later, they became truer. You don't fill silence because you are afraid of it. You notice exits. You make jokes only after checking whether the room can hold them. You apologize like you mean to live differently afterward. Once, in her studio, I said, "You look at damaged things as if they are not embarrassing." Rowan's brush paused above a frame. "They aren't." "I know. I'm trying to learn." She set the brush down and came to where I sat on the old wooden stool. "May I?" she asked, because she asked before touching in, a way that sometimes made me want to cry. I nodded. She took my hands, thumbs moving once over my knuckles. "You are not a project," she said. "I know. Do you? Theory is improving." Her smile was sad and fond. Good. We kissed beside the work table, surrounded by broken saints and patient tools. Her mouth tasted of tea. Her hands stayed on mine until I moved them to her waist myself. Jade learned about us before rumor could make something cheap out of it. Rowan told her first, because even in pain she believed in clean doors, and I waited in my apartment rearranging pencils into lines so straight they began to look like a threat. When Rowan called afterward, her voice sounded tired, but not broken. Jade had cried, she said, and then had been quiet in a way neither of us knew how to trust yet. 2 days later, Jade sent me a message that did not ask for anything. She wrote that it hurt, that she would not pretend otherwise, but that she knew she had given up the right to arrange my heart around her comfort. She hoped Rowan would be kind to me. She hoped I would be kind to myself. I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time, feeling anger, sadness, relief, and something almost like gratitude, which annoyed me because grief should not be allowed such poor organization. I did not forgive her because she had written one decent paragraph, but I stopped needing her to remain the worst version of herself forever. I answered simply, telling her I was still angry and that I hoped she would be honest with people from now on. Then I went to Rowan's studio. She was cleaning a frame with cotton swabs, her hair falling loose around her face. When I told her, she set the work down and asked how I felt. I said, like I returned a library book after the fine got enormous. She laughed, surprised and aching, and I kissed her because the sound felt like a room I wanted to live in. Our first night together happened in my apartment during a February storm that made the windows tremble and the radiator perform a one-man percussion piece. I had not planned it, which is not the same as saying I had not imagined it with frankly alarming frequency.
Here, expert care begins with a conversation, where your genetic history is rewriting your future, and where we are redefining cardiac, cancer, and orthopedic care with world-class partners. Here, there's an emergency department designed just for kids, and mental health means community health. From the everyday to the complex, Stanford Health. Care, it's different here.
Contracts don't just document business, they drive it. Contract data is buried in inboxes, shared drives, disconnected systems. That's where Agiloft comes in. We centralize contracts, automate workflows, connect data across your business, so legal, procurement, and leadership work from the same source of truth. Agiloft takes contracting to the next level.
Rowan came over with soup because I had a cold, and she believed in practical tenderness, the most dangerous kind. She brought ginger, tissues, and a paperback mystery she said was terrible enough to heal anyone through spite. I wore leggings, wool socks, and a sweatshirt with paint on the sleeve. My hair had entered a political crisis. I answered the door prepared to be adored at my least glamorous, which felt both comforting and unfair. "You look," Rowan said, eyes moving over me. "Very committed to recovery. Careful." I was going to say beautiful, but I feared it would sound predatory while holding soup. "Soup softens most crimes." She smiled and stepped in. We ate on the floor near the radiator. She read aloud from the terrible mystery in a solemn voice, until a detective described a suspect's eyes as emerald daggers, and I nearly choked. The storm pressed close. At some point, she touched my forehead to check for fever, a gesture so domestic and unguarded that desire moved through me slowly, not like fire, but like warm water finding every room. I caught her wrist before she pulled away. She looked at me, and the laughter left both of us without making the room less kind. "Mara," she said. "I'm not feverish." I wasn't going to ask that. "Ask whatever you were going to ask." Her pulse beat beneath my fingers. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Not about everything," I said. "About this." The honesty steadied us more than certainty would have. I kissed the inside of her wrist first. Her eyes closed. When I rose onto my knees and kissed her mouth, she met me with a tenderness that did not hide its hunger. We moved slowly because slow had become our language. Sweater hems lifted. Hands paused, asked, received. Her skin under my palms was warm, real, not symbolic, not forbidden by anything except fear that had already governed too long. I will not turn that night into a performance for anyone, not even memory. What matters is not the choreography, but the care. Rowan asking, always, until I told her she could stop asking out loud because I would tell her if anything hurt. Me laughing because my nose was still stuffy, and sensuality, it turns out, has poor respect for respiratory health. Her mouth at my shoulder, my hands in her hair, the storm covering the city's noise while we learned the private geography of each other's wanting. I cried once, suddenly, not from sadness exactly, but from the shock of being touched without being used as proof of anything. Rowan froze immediately, face stricken. I pulled her back down to me. "Good tears," I whispered, which was an inadequate phrase, but the only one available. She kissed the tears at my temple with such fierce gentleness that my chest ached. Later, we lay tangled under blankets on the mattress I had finally upgraded from transitional desperation to actual furniture. The room smelled of rain, ginger, and her skin. The radiator clanked. "I feel like I should say something profound," I murmured. "Please don't," she said against my shoulder. "I'm very tired." I laughed, and she lifted her head, smiling in a way I had never seen before, unguarded and a little dazed. "Hi," I said. "Hi. You look smug." "I feel grateful." It may be similar around the eyes. I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, finally allowed the gesture I had resisted by the railing weeks before. She turned her face into my palm. There was no dramatic promise, no sudden cure. Jade still existed. The past still existed. My heart did not become spotless because another woman had loved it carefully for a night. But something had been returned to me that I had not known betrayal had stolen. The sense that my body belonged to me even when it opened towards someone else. I slept with Rowan's arm around my waist, and when I woke in the gray morning, congested and thirsty and stiff in one hip, she was in my kitchen making tea while wearing my sweatshirt. She looked nothing like a replacement. She looked like a future doing its best not to frighten me. The ending, if a life can be said to have one before it ends, was not a wedding or a grand declaration in front of everyone who had ever misunderstood us. It was a Friday evening in late rain, 2 years after the apartment with the false wall, when Rowan and I walked home from her studio carrying takeout and a repaired frame wrapped in brown paper. The city smelled of wet pavement and bread from the bakery on the corner. My hand was in her coat pocket with hers because I had forgotten gloves, and she claimed this was an inefficient but charming system. We had spent the afternoon in the studio, me finishing sketches for a film poster while she completed the final touches on a painted wooden box that had belonged to someone's grandmother. At one point, I had looked up and found her watching me. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. I like the way you frown when a line is wrong." "That is alarming. You have chosen a life of frequent satisfaction." She smiled and went back to work. Ordinary. That was the word that kept astonishing me. Not boring.
There is no upstate, or downstate, or neighboring state when it comes to healthcare. The standards should not change. It should rise to meet every community. Northwell is here to raise health for all.
Never that. Ordinary as in woven into the day. Ordinary as in no longer needing catastrophe to prove intensity. We passed the old gallery where I had first seen the woman in green restored into her damaged dignity. The lights were on for another show. Through the window, I saw strangers holding wine, leaning toward art as if hoping it might explain them. Rowan squeezed my hand. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "Often." With regret? I considered. The rain tapped the paper-wrapped frame. A streetcar bell sounded in the distance. No. With tenderness for how terrified we were. Rowan smiled. We were extremely dignified. We declined wine like it had insulted our ancestors. It might have. We stopped under the awning because the rain thickened suddenly, silver in the streetlight. For a second, the city blurred, and I saw the path behind us not as a straight line, but as a series of lit rooms. Priya's kitchen, the market awning, the studio, the gallery, the railing, my small apartment, the coast, this sidewalk. None of them erased the others. They held. Rowan turned toward me under the awning, rain shining on her dark hair, the repaired frame tucked carefully under one arm. "You are doing the looking thing," she said. "What looking thing?" "Like you have found a metaphor and are deciding whether to burden me with it." "I would never burden you with a metaphor." Mara. "Fine, I was thinking about rooms. Manageable. And damage. Less original in this household. And how I used to think being loved meant being chosen so completely that nothing could threaten it." She listened, her face open in that way that had once frightened me because it left me responsible for answering with truth.
Alright guys, that was all entire stream for all one game. This freaking mobile port of a game that I'm trying to blaze through. It's taking fucking forever, man. Oh my god. That's a good GL story though, right? It's pretty good. Pretty good. They did the twins thing before, but I'm not sure if it's Rose or not. Well. It's a short stream, but, you know, that's the way it is. Sorry for the intermission, but, just, had to, hash out some stuff. Let's put it that way. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other.